Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to Fiddlehead Nursery. So, my business is mainly in selling edible perennials. So almost everything I sell lives a long time and you can eat from it. And most of these also serve other functions. So there are nitrogen fixers, there are ground covers, and we propagate them in a variety of different ways. Number one is seed saving. So we save a lot of seed from the plants we have in our demonstration gardens and then grow them out for the spring. And we also dig up plants and divide them to propagate them, and then we take a lot of softwood and hardwood cuttings. I don't do any grafting. I do sell fruit trees, but I get them in from Silver Creek Nursery, who produces them organically near Kitchener-Waterloo. They're a great nursery. I also grow some nut trees from seed. So we're just starting to grow more hazelnuts, hard nuts, and hickories, as well as some chestnuts and other unusual nuts. This is a bubbler propagator. I saw this idea being illustrated on YouTube by Sean from Edible Acres, which is an amazing YouTube channel. So what you do is you fill a tank with water and then put hardware cloth over top and then get an aquarium bubbler to aerate the water and keep it from going stagnant. And then you just take cuttings from herbaceous perennials and shrubs and vines and stick them through the landscape fabric, which keeps the leaves above the water while the water helps them stay alive and callus while they're producing roots. So a lot of these are experiments. Some of them do really well. This oregano we stuck in here a couple of weeks ago, and you can see that they've developed some really nice roots, so we should be potting these up now. And then there's some kiwis in here. They haven't rooted quite yet. We stuck them in a couple of weeks ago, but they're starting to callus. This is winter savory. We've got some sea buckthorn. There's some Siberian pea shrub, which doesn't look like it's doing all that well. There's some gumi. There's some stone crop. So we have a variety of different things. We keep on trying new things in here, and it's really just very much an experiment, but it's working quite well for most of the things we've tried. There's a guy in New York State called Akiva Silver. He runs Twisted Tree Nursery, and I've been inspired by him recently and built an air prune bed. So this is an air prune bed which has hardware cloth. This is hardware cloth, and in the bottom of the bed, the soil in this bed is held up by the hardware cloth, so it's just on top of these 2x6s. So the idea is that nut trees have deep taproots, so if you plant a nut in this bed, it will germinate and the root will go down and hit the air at the bottom of the bed and die, stimulating the rest of the root mass to branch out. So it makes for a really easily transplantable nut tree. So we have a few experiments going in here. There's some black locust, some seedless sorrel. There's a few pawpaws coming up. I'll show you. We built a cage around this bed to stop the squirrels and the birds from digging up the nuts, which they would readily do. And then we have a huge variety of nuts in here. So there's hickories, there's some heart nuts, there's some Carpathian walnuts, there's some Chinese American chestnut hybrids. This is a pokeweed that volunteered here actually, but we're letting it live. We'll pot that up to sell it. Pokeweed is a wonderful spring green if you prepare it properly. So it's a really easy way to grow lots of nuts that you can then transplant into your garden or pot up for sale. This is essentially just a sandbox. I call it a sand bed, and it's for propagating hardwood cuttings. So I'll be cutting currants, gooseberries, elderberries, just taking cuttings and then cutting them off at a node and sticking them in the sand bed in the winter. And I try to do it before the sand freezes, but if it freezes, then I'll just take an edger to break into the sand and make lines and stick the cuttings in. You can do it in the middle of winter, and they do remarkably well in here. Those three, the currants, gooseberries, and elderberry, are most successful, but I've also tried other shrubs and have mixed success. But for those, it's a really easy way of propagating them. They'll root very easily in a sand bed. They don't need any nutrients. They just need to be held upright and in a well-draining medium. So you can just take any sandbox or just build a box and fill it with sand and do this at home. When I first had this greenhouse up, I was growing plants on the benches and it was really sunny, and so I needed shade. And I could have bought shade cloth, which is what most greenhouses do, but I thought I should plant some grapes because they would provide shade and also a good yield of grapes and also beauty. And so now I have a beautiful environment in which to work, and it does provide shade. In the early spring, I need the greenhouse to heat up earlier in the season, and so the leaves don't come out until later on in the spring. So in the spring it does warm up in here quite a bit, and I get a 2 or 3 week jump on the season for growing plants and setting up the greenhouse. And then it leaves out just before summer hits, so that when we get the heat of the summer, we have enough shade in here to protect ourselves as well as the plants on the benches. There's a permaculture principle that outlines how you should have multiple functions out of every aspect of your design. And so the grapes illustrate that nicely with shade and productivity as far as a food crop goes. We're also experimenting with some kiwis. This is a kiwi vine that we just planted this year to see how well it'll do in here. So I'm also experimenting with multiple different varieties of grapes to see which works well here, and mainly growing seedless table grapes. I had heard years ago that seedless table grapes are an underused commercial crop in Ontario, and I've always loved seedless grapes, and so you want to grow what you particularly want to eat. And now I have a number of different varieties, all different colors of grapes, and so there are some of my favorites are Himrod and Interlaken, which are 2 closely related green seedless grapes, and Somerset and Reliance and Vanessa are all purple grapes when they're fully ripe, and these are all very sweet, delicious table grapes. I think they're superior to the grapes that you can find in the grocery stores, which have all been bred to travel great distances, but not for flavor. And the grapes here are quite a bit smaller than the ones you find in the stores, but they pack a punch in terms of flavor. So in my mind, they're superior, mainly because I grow them and they're organically produced. And I do have problems with the grapes. The raccoons love the grapes as much as I do. So we have to trap raccoons in here and relocate them. I have been dreaming of getting a farm dog for a while who would sleep in the greenhouse to discourage the raccoons from coming in, but I haven't gotten there yet. One thing I discovered when I planted these was that I cut holes through the landscape fabric in order to plant these and put compost in the hole, and then weeds would come in and quite easily take hold where the grapes are growing. And so I planted seedless sorrel, which is one of my favorite edible ground covers. There's 3 plants planted around each grapevine, and they do a great job of keeping the weeds down and holding moisture in. And also we eat a lot from the sorrel in the greenhouse, particularly in the spring when it comes up much quicker and earlier than the sorrel we have planted out in the garden.